Hello, gorgeous soul. This is a fun conversation that I'm really excited to have with you because I want to talk about something that I don't think I've mentioned really outside of my programs. I talk to all of creation, like pretty much all of the time, every day. Like I'm talking to nature, to the earth herself, to I call her Gaia, but Mother Nature, the consciousness of the planet, to trees, to animals, and other people, of course, because you too are part of nature, believe it or not. Sometimes we forget that we are not separate from everything that's around us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can either start or expand and deepen the conversations that you're having with nature, with all of creation. Now, part of this is going to be intuitive development, and part of it is going to be using the observational skills that you have. Part of it is just giving it a try, right? Like actually starting the conversation, because sometimes we get to be the one to start that. And the very first step is having the stillness within you to be able to come to the conversation with an open heart and open ears and open senses, right? If we are hanging out and we're not in a space where we can receive messages back, then it's a one-sided conversation, and we're going to ask, well, I'm talking to creation. Why isn't it listening? Why are I not receiving the messages? Why is nobody answering me, right? When we are in a state of presence and openness, instead of having our shields up, right, in that fight or flight kind of energy, then and only then are we going to be able to have a two-sided conversation with nature. So when I'm talking about connecting with nature and having conversations, I'm going to be speaking from my personal experience and also what I see and witness clients and friends being able to do. How you have these conversations is up to you. But like I said, you get to be the one to start, to open the conversation. And that means literally asking, whether that's out loud or if you are doing it in your head with your heart, like telepathically. You gotta start actually speaking and interacting to begin that flow of energy. So you can connect with the earth and literally speak to her and say like, hey, I wanna feel your presence, right? Hey, Mother Earth. Hey, Gaia. How are you? Right? It doesn't matter what you say, but literally reaching out with your energy, then that opens the doorway for the gateway for that conversation to start to flow. So if you never ask, it's not going to like barge in and start to try to like knock down your shields that you might have up to speak. So when you ask for messages, for connection, for support, for collaboration, for energy, you can do that out loud. You can do it in your head. You can do it, like I said, to Mother Earth, to nature itself, to all of creation. You can do it to specific parts of nature. You can talk with trees. I have great conversations with trees, sometimes in English, sometimes in light language. I have conversations with the air, with different elements, with fire, with water. You can have conversations with animals, of course. You can have conversations with rocks. And these conversations are something that you're going to have to listen to for the responses in a few different ways, because everybody perceives the responses differently. It depends on what your strongest senses are. Shamina is saying, I enjoy talking with nature. Amazing. So let me know how you start those conversations, Shamina, and how do you receive the messages? Because all of us communicate in different ways. So some of us are going to be really visual and we'll speak to nature and ask for a sign, right? And then we will see something Maybe it's going to be something that's going to spark a memory. Maybe it's going to be something that's like going to be a metaphor, right? Sometimes you will be shown the way to go on a path, right? Sometimes you will be seeing something that is like an obvious answer to what you've been asking. Maybe it's direct, maybe it's metaphor, right? When you're a visual kind of clue person. But maybe you're going to hear something. Maybe if you're like saying, I'm really not sure what direction I should be taking in my life or in my business, nature, creation, elements, Gaia, do you have any messages for me? If you're open to receive them, you might hear a bird sing and that might spark something for you. Whatever it sparks in your imagination, let that be true for you, by the way. You can't just dismiss it and be, if something sparks an idea, an inspiration, that's how we start to communicate, right? That's how we start to have these conversations. And it begins with trusting the imagination, which is just the gateway to the multidimensional realm. By the way, it's how we interpret information, like extrasensory information that doesn't come through easily in other ways. Some people are going to be feelers, right? Maybe you send that message out. You're like, hey, earth, trees, whoever you're talking to, I'm feeling lonely. I want to feel you. I want to feel support. Feel in your body. Open to receive and see what kind of sensations come through your body. Now, these are all our, regular everyday senses that we can just tune into to start the opening of like what is coming into us. And then there's just an expansion of that kind of goes into our, what people might call clairsenses, right? The psychic senses, your clairaudience, clairvoyance, your clairsentience, your claircognizance. So if you are a visual person normally, right, that's like how you love getting information. Instead of just seeing a bird and then like having that idea, maybe it expands into your speaking with nature and then something comes through your mind's eye and you have a vision of a waterfall. You have a vision in your imagination of something, and that is the message. That could be written off very easily as your imagination, but just destroy and uncreate all of those judgments you have about your imagination, because truly that's how a lot of this starts, right? It's to start to trust yourself and not write it off, because that's what we do. We write off these things that are actually communications from all of creation to us. I love it. So, Shamina, I asked you, how do you communicate with nature? And you said, when I go for walks and when the weather's not too good, I ask for it not to be too sunny and it calms down. I love that. Yeah, you can absolutely connect, make requests, right? Communicate and receive those signs. I've definitely, especially with groups, controlled, requested the weather to support us in certain ways. It has the choice whether or not it's going to listen to that, but it's been fun to watch clouds that were headed right for you just like veer off and be like, okay, we'll leave you guys dry because you're doing something awesome. We can respect that. So you can have all of these messages come through in very visceral, tangible ways and have experiences like that, and they can be less tangible, right? If you're someone who is very auditory and you have messages come through, like you love hearing things, you love audiobooks, like sound is really important to you, music is really important to you, you could have messages that come through the whistling of the wind and the sound of a babbling brook and the sound of a bird singing or other animals making noise. Or maybe you're going to hear something that you might write off as your imagination. But it's not your imagination. It's like you're hearing it, but it's not from the physical realm. Maybe it is that extrasensory perception that's coming through your ears because that is your strongest sense, right? You might actually hear creation or nature speak back to you. This happens to me like all of the time. It's really normal for me. I can talk to the element and I can just, the elements, to trees, to Mother Nature herself, and just be like, hey, Gaia, let's chat. What's going on here? Give me this information. What would you like to know? And I hear their voices in my ear. But I also sometimes get it in what I would call a download, right? Through the claircognizance, which is this clear knowing psychic sense that I think most of us get, but we write off as imagination, or we don't understand that it's coming from outside of self. So these feel like downloads to me. They feel like all of a sudden you're just getting information coming through that you're like, I didn't know that before this moment, and I didn't get it through, you know, like a book or someone telling me. It's just like, and now you know, here it is. It's these packages of information typically that you can uncode, and they can be very multidimensional for me personally because I have all of my psychic senses open. So it might contain, you know, the information in a download, but there's also like, I might hear that voice coming through, and then I also might see something like, it's almost like synesthesia, where it's coming through in this package where you can like smell the colors kind of thing. But that's something that I have developed and practiced over time, right? You might not get all of it, but maybe you already are, and you're just writing it off as your imagination. So these downloads can come just as a knowing that is suddenly coming from seemingly above, or seemingly from like inside of you, from your heart. All of a sudden you just know something, right? Let me know if that's ever happened to you. Vicky's saying, as a child, I would sing the song, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun. Yes. I love talking to the sun. Oh my gosh. It's not for the sun. I don't actually get clairaudient messages from the sun. Like, it doesn't talk back to me that same way that, say, Gaia, the earth, does, or the elements do quite frequently. But what I receive are these light codes from the sun, and I can unpack the information. But often from the sun, it's a feeling, which is the next one I was going to talk about. Like, it's just this feeling sense that's on my body that I am. It's like, you're not just feeling the warmth, you're not just feeling the light, which of course you can get from the sun. But for me, when I'm feeling light codes coming in my body, it just feels like it's remembering. It feels like it's activating. It feels like my DNA is awakening, and there's different things just like popping into my awareness. It's energy, exactly. So that clairsentience of like the feeling that's kind of ineffable, but it's literally in your body. So if you're someone who is a feeler, who gets chills when you hear the truth, maybe you get goosebumps, or what we would call truth bumps. If you feel energy moving through your body, if you're wanting to have a conversation with nature, you might not get the ear kind of thing. You might not get the visual thing. That's okay. Maybe you just ask and you speak, and then you feel warmth. Maybe you feel like you're being hugged, or maybe you feel a sensation of tingles or prickles or what have you, right? Maybe you feel it in your gut, maybe you feel it in your heart, maybe you feel it on your crown, right? Interpreting the feelings gets to be done through your imagination, right? So I want to invite you to let whatever is coming through be true for you, right? The very first thing, like, oh, I feel tingles, that must mean this, right? Don't then go, oh, yeah, but I'm probably making that up. Start to give yourself permission to trust the things that come through for you, and you'll be amazed, because when you trust it and you start to develop that trust, it like opens the energy channels, and everything just starts to become amplified. So this is the wonderful thing about life on earth, is we get to practice. Most of us have to practice being able to feel, you know, in different ways, and even notice that it's happening, because these more psychic senses are very subtle at first. And so you have to be in that stillness and presence with enough spaciousness energetically, enough calmness and stillness to hear it, feel it, see it, know it. And you also have to trust yourself enough not to write it off as your imagination. Vicky's saying it feels magical. Yes. Yes. And that is the other part that I love. When we start to like come into these spaces of conversing with creation and connecting with nature and with all of the elements, magic comes alive. Like you're like, wow, I live in a magical world, and there's no doubt in your heart about that, you know? It's not like, oh, I want to believe in magic. You're getting this information directly to you, so you get to trust it. And I totally understand people that don't have this ability to connect in and sense energy, why they would be skeptical. Like, I get that 100%. And also, it's difficult to prove because it is energy, right? But when you have the physicalized experiences of it, you're like, well, like, I have my proof, but it's something that has to be done on this individual level. Shamina, you were asking, do you see all my psychic senses open? I feel things and just know. It gives me confirmation with tingles. Absolutely, but I also feel like you've got places to expand in your trust of self, right? And that comes with practice. It comes with the inner work, right? And it comes from asking, like setting the intention, like, say, I want to trust my intuition. I want to expand my intuition. I want to be able to speak more clearly with all of creation and have it speak back, like not have it speak back, but be able to hear it, understand it when it speaks back to me, right? It's like being a kid again, Vicky says, rediscovering the world from that childlike perspective. Yeah, because kids have these senses turned on already. We're born this way. And then what happens as we grow up is we check in with adults, and if they don't see, feel, hear, know what we're sensing, we go, they're authority figures and they're not actually seeing or hearing this. So because I want to have this consensus reality experience, I'm going to put my trust in them over myself, because that's what I've been taught, to trust the outside authority over me. I'm just going to ignore that. And then it kind of gets shut down and turned off, right? And sometimes even worse, the adults go, there's no fairies. Fairies aren't real. No, that's just your imagination, right? And then we shut it off. We go, okay, that's not real. And so as adults, we get to go through this journey of like, okay, I want to actually have this intuition that I know I have, and I want to reopen my psychic senses so I can start to have those experiences that are for me, instead of trusting an outside authority, which is the greatest gift you can ever give yourself, by the way. It's work. So it's really cool to be witnessing my child be in spaces and places where people are like, yeah, you can talk to trees. Sure. You can connect telepathically with animals. Absolutely. Why don't you talk to Mother Earth and see what she says and what she feels like? So I'm very curious to see what her experience in this world is going to be if she doesn't go through the process of having the magic stuff kind of shut down, right? And then not having to like pry it back open. I turned a lot of my stuff off when I was a kid because it was scary, right? Like, especially the visual stuff, because sometimes I would see things that I didn't understand, and that I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I was like, I don't want that. That's scary. Shut it down. I would still see some stuff because I wasn't effective in shutting it down completely. But then I was like, in my mid-20s going, I actually would like my psychic senses open. And so I had to like pry them open. But I did it. I did it with practice. And now it's just a part of my everyday experience. And that does mean that I get to live in a magical world. And I love bringing people into that magic. It's like one of my favorite things. So this weekend, I am putting on this masterclass where I'm going to create these spaces for people to have conversations and physical, tangible experiences with Gaia, the consciousness of the planet, like Mother Earth, Pachamama, whatever you want to call her. We're going to have experiences with the elements, which have their own consciousness as well. Earth, air, fire, water, and spirit are the ones that we work with. And everyone is going to get a chance to receive their own messages. And it's going to be for you very specifically. And I think when we start to get our own messages and then we feel the resonance and we're like, oh yeah, it's so different than if I were to just tell you, right? My favorite thing is creating these spaces and places for people to receive their own information. So it's coming through them, not through me. People have asked me like, hey, like, what, can you do a psychic reading for me? And I'm like, I'd rather not. I'd rather teach you to come into this sacred space and open things up and hold space and guide you so that you can get your own stuff. And of course, I share information when I'm working with clients and I'm working with groups, but it's not as important and it doesn't land the same way as when you get that own inner experience, right? Because if it's coming through you, you trust that. So I want to create sacred spaces for people to have those experiences. That's what this weekend is about, the Elemental Prosperity Masterclass. If you haven't registered, come, right? Come and play. If you're like, I would like to amplify my intuition, I would like to have these conversations with creations and get some answers, please come and join us. And if you can't make it live, I work in the 0 point, right? Replays are just as powerful. So make sure that you register, right? It's posted all over my feed. It's in the notes if you're watching this on YouTube. So this Elemental Prosperity Masterclass is for us to have these connections, this container that I get to facilitate, right? Like Marie is saying, we are facilitators. Yeah, that I get to facilitate and hold space for everyone to receive their own information. So it's not coming from this outer authority. And here's the thing, when you have someone hold space, oh my God, it's so much easier, right? It's so much easier. But it cracks the door open and you learn how to do it, and then you can do it on your own. So it's basically practicing. It's like having training wheels, but better than that, like so much better, because there's also so much value in just connecting together, because the group field is really powerful, right? When we all come together and our energies co-create these beautiful containers, what comes through is going to be profoundly unique for the group and then also the individuals. And for people who, aren't visual, that's okay. If you don't hear things, that's okay. We're going to have tools and ways to make it like tangible in the body, because everyone that's going to be there has a body that has sensation. So we're going to, start to play and understand with those physical sensations as a gateway or entry point, because it's sort of the easiest one for people, I think, to access these conversations with. And we'll talk about, allowing it just to be what it is. But we'll also be working with each element and giving people an elemental template, and you'll get it intuitively, but we'll also offer like a way for you to get your own oracle card reading for that. We've got beautiful ways of sharing that over technology, even if you don't have a deck right there, and you can receive the messages you need from each element, right? For your body, for your mental realm, for your emotional realm, for your heart space, for the spiritual ineffable part of you, your soul, and then also for the actions that are for you to take. And it's all really about being able to amplify your abundance, your prosperity, and nature wants that for us. Just being able to do this, to have conversations with nature, with creation, with the elements, with the earth, actually starts to tap us into that infinite abundance consciousness field that does exist, because it takes us out of the realm of separation and feeling alone and into this realm of, holy smokes, the world is actually full of magic, of support, of like consciousness that we can interact with, that we can get wisdom from. And then when you realize that you can tap into this wisdom that is so profound, and that will always meet you where you're at, which is also key, that you're going to get what is for you in this moment, then you really tap into the idea that there's no lack, right? If you don't know, you can receive information to bring you to the next space that you need. And also for me, it really helps me to understand that, I'm not going to know everything right now. I'm not supposed to. That's not what this form and this game is about. But I can tap in to receive the wisdom and support for where I'm at right now, and I will know what I need to know, right? So it takes away the struggle and the striving. When you know there's basically this infinite consciousness that is speaking through and to you through everything that's around you, and you can pull from these messages. And nothing is going to be more profound to help you learn how to human, right? How to be human. Because right now it's our greatest lesson to come back to that, right? The ancients, the wise ones, the ancestors, they had a better handle on how we were part of nature, how we were part of an ecosystem. And then humans, in their explorations of separation, which is not a bad thing, it was just a thing we had to go through for our evolution, we took ourselves out of nature, right? In terms of how we perceived it. If you tell people that they're animals, some of them will go, well, yeah, obviously, but others will get really offended, be like, oh, how dare you? Because they think that we are above, think that we are more than, greater than animals. No, we are Homo sapiens, right? We are literally animals. It's not an insult. It's just a matter of fact. We are not separate from nature. We're not separate from the ecosystem and the ecology. And as we return to this understanding that, of course, has been kept alive by the indigenous traditions and all of that, it's not like it has gone away, but we can see from looking at our world that there was a large percentage of populations that did wind up removing themselves from the nature, in their mind. And then that caused that separation to create all kinds of dysfunction. Right? As we're playing out, what's it like to be separate from everything and everyone? It caused a lot of chaos, a lot of disease, a lot of imbalance, a lot of alienation, a lot of ravaging of the environment, right? So being able to have a conversation with creation, with nature, is, I think, one of the most healing things we can do for our own hearts. And then, of course, it gets to ripple out in everything that we do. When we really understand ourselves to be part of nature, you don't want to harm it. You don't want to invest in things that are going to, be destructive to it or other beings in it. So I feel like we do this for us first, but then also it is the way forward, right, for humanity to remember that we are part of this all that is, and that we can actually connect with it and gain all the wisdom that we need instead of thinking that we're separate. So it's this beautiful journey back to where we were, of course, before we started that journey of separation, right? The journey that many are already on. I'm not saying anything new, but I want to bring this the way that I know how to you, right? I want to create spaces for people to have those own experiences. And my favorite thing ever is I also train people to facilitate these experiences as well. So that's my way of rippling it out. I think this is how we get to return to this balanced, harmonious state with ourselves and with everything around us. And we can get there. It's a journey. We don't have to do it by ourselves. That's the whole point. So if you were just tuning in at the last bit of the live here, we went through how, different ways you can connect with nature, different ways you can use your senses to have the conversation. But I just want to wrap it up and say, just start talking. Literally start talking, either with your heart or even better, out loud, to creation, to nature, to Mother Nature, to the elements, the birds, the bees, the trees, the rocks, to the weather. speak to it, and then open up your being and just be really aware and present with what is and what's coming through, and let your imagination interpret it for you. And that's where we start. And that's where it gets really fun. When you start and you start to trust and you get a little bit, then you'll open up for more. So come and play with me this weekend in Elemental Prosperity to really expand this conversation with creation and get your own template to how you can expand your abundance and support and connection by really tapping into nature. I am sending you so much love, and I'm also going to celebrate. This is day 31, so I'm going to say at least a month done here of the 365 Live Challenge. I am having so much fun connecting with you. I will see you tomorrow. Have a beautiful day, and of course, if you're watching the replay, do let me know. #replays, and if you've watched this on YouTube, like it, subscribe, share it out to someone who needs to hear this message. I love you.